Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Market Talk. Today we're joined by Rob Wager, Sales Director of Maidaid Halcyon, and Louise Palmer-Masterton, who is the founder of the plant-based restaurant operator STEM and Glory. Good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us today. Obviously a very interesting time in the food service sector at the moment, with the reopening happening, which seems to be occurring on a fairly gradual basis, I think, if we look across the market. Just starting with you, Louise, am I right in saying that you're looking to reopen your businesses at the end of July?
Yeah, that's right. Cautious reopening from the 30th of July. We decided to just do it in stages, really, just to ease everybody back into the routine of working again. So, yeah.
And what was really the thinking behind that then? It was about just getting people back to work, maybe taking a look at what's happening from the 4th of July onwards?
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to some people yesterday also in the industry, and honestly, it's kind of worse than new openings, reopening after this long break, because you haven't really got that kind of excitement and impetus of a new opening, you know, something that's kind of brand new. But you've got all of the same systems and procedures because nothing is the same now. It's all changed. Everything from suppliers, you know, not just the actual suppliers, but the actual suppliers that the suppliers have got has changed. So it's a much bigger job to get all stocked up again. Yeah, so the word on the street is really that it's not really a reopening. It's kind of a new opening, like literally starting over again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're cautiously staging it. We're opening 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday from the beginning. The government's out to help out sort of through a bit of a curveball in that now, of course, we're considering whether to open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. What we'll probably actually do is just open on a Wednesday and see how that goes. And then open gradually. You know, we haven't got massively high expectations. We are getting quite a few bookings coming in, which is encouraging. But yeah, we just want to kind of ease into it gradually and not stress our staff out, make sure we've got everything safe. We're quite fortunate in our London site. It's quite spacious anyway, so we haven't got any problems there. Our Cambridge site is very small, so we're actually just opening for click and collect and delivery there initially.
Rightio. Likewise, Rob, over at Maidaid, you are one of the suppliers that Louise mentioned. So what stage are you guys at? Did you have to kind of shut down over the period, or were you managing to operate at some capacity?
We've been very lucky, really. I mean, we reduced staffing during the initial parts of the lockdown back in March quite heavily to address it, because obviously there was a knock-on effect throughout the industry. From a stock level point of view, we've been very lucky in the fact that we'd already ramped up our stock levels from the beginning of last year because of the potential issues with Brexit and the unknown with the delivery schedule. So our levels went up from what we normally carry 800 units in stock for next day delivery up to about 1,500. And we've kept around about that sort of level over this sort of period. Although there was a short time where the factories were shut, we haven't had a major effect from us. So we've still been in a position to supply everything from an under-counter glass washer right up to a large mini rack on next day delivery. I think we live in an Amazon world, whether we like it or not, and I think it's what people expect, and it's what the end user and the dealers need, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, and how have you managed to kind of keep relationships going with end users and dealers across this time, especially when so many sites have been completely shut?
That's been difficult. Obviously, with our route to market, it is via the dealer base. We have obviously direct contact with end users as well, but I've been in personal contact myself. The regional sales reps are all furloughed at the beginning, so I've been ringing around the top 15, 20 dealers in each area to get a feel for the industry, really. And that the RSM has returned on a part-time basis last week, and their first remit really was to make contact with with the dealers, who in turn are speaking on a day-to-day basis with the end users to get a feel for the industry, to see where we are with regard to staffing levels, requirements, and potential inquiries moving forward.
Rob, I see that you've launched or announced the launch of Zoom training, you know, on your product set. What sort of expectations do you have around that? Do you think operators or dealers will be keen to kind of utilise that kind of service?
Yeah, I think we're all living in a different landscape at the moment, aren't we? I mean, I think that everybody's preference is to have face-to-face training, and we do monthly training courses for products, but also engineer training. And obviously, as and when we're in a position to get back to that, that's the way forward. But in the short term, to keep the dealers and in turn the end users aware of the product ranges, I think it's beneficial for everybody concerned. Even the staff that have been furloughed, obviously they're still allowed to do the product training courses, which is beneficial. I think the majority of the people I'm speaking are chomping at the bit to get back to a bit of normality. So any sort of interaction, whether it be dealers or end users, it's all very much appreciated, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. And Louise, you must have had to adapt your business massively during the last few months. Can you give us some insight to really the biggest changes that you've had to encounter?
Yeah, I mean, we closed completely before we were asked to, actually, because the writing was on the wall, really. But I'm an optimist anyway by nature. But what this break has brought us is some really valuable time to reflect and build some new things, because we were so busy last year. We had these ideas about developing some new online stuff, our online store, deliveries and so on, but we just didn't have the time to do it. So we've actually, the initial 6 weeks of this lockdown was quite shocking, I would say. This was before the government schemes sort of really kicked in. But once that support did come in, we were able then to sort of really devote time and energy to new growth strategies, really. So what we've now got coming out of this is far, far stronger than we had coming into it. We've gone for a complete brand overhaul, working with a fabulous designer. So we've got all new brand assets, rebranding. We've actually, the break has also allowed us to go back. We were actually about to sign on a new site in London. So the break has allowed us to go back and renegotiate the terms on that very favourably. So that's for next year. And we've also now, because the aforementioned issues with our Cambridge site being too small, we've just secured another site in Cambridge, which is much bigger, much more kind of COVID secure environment, and it will allow us to build. So in this new site, we'll now have 50% back of house, 50% front, which will allow us to grow the online delivery side of the business as well. So, and we got equally a fabulous deal on this site too. So now it's changing a lot, but what I think will emerge from this is far greater than went into it, albeit with a little bit of time, obviously, to settle down.
Yeah,
we're hoping to create a lot more, we're hoping to create a lot of more new jobs as well. I don't know, you will have heard the government schemes announced last week as well, with this Kickstart job scheme. So we're hoping that we'll be able to actually create some new posts on our new site. So yeah, all in all, quite optimistic, really.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you typically have been plant-based kind of menu. Have you kind of had to make any changes to that due to all the COVID crisis?
Yeah, we're certainly not going back into the other direction. Well, I mean, again, I think, what comes out of this crisis, I mean, I heard something on the radio the other day talking about even being half a stone overweight puts you at a far higher risk of something like COVID. So, I think what will come out as well will be a move towards greater health and well-being, and obviously plant-based, not just for health and well-being, but also for carbon impact reasons. There's going to be even stronger coming out of this as well. What we have done, and I think, I mean, it remains to be seen whether this is an industry-wide change, but I think the trends before the lockdown, you had to be everything. You had to have an all singing and dancing menu with loads of options, all the drinks and la 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 la, and it had to be a really good price point as well. I think coming out of this, hopefully we'll be able to offer a much more streamlined menu, and hopefully people will be a lot more tolerant of how it is to run a restaurant, and how much perhaps they value restaurants as well. So we're definitely making our offering more streamlined, perhaps smaller, but changing more frequently is the way that we're going to go with that. And we're hoping, that people will be a lot more accepting of, well, I mean, it's bookings, for example, making bookings, turning up for their bookings. I read a little bit about that last week. People, the scourge of the no-show within our industry is massive. But I mean, it's even more significant now that we've got such reduced capacities. So we're very much hoping that the customers will work alongside us to help us build our new models going forward into the future.
So accordingly, has this meant that you've had to kind of change the way you use the equipment back of house, or change the layout back of house at any of your sites as well?
Yeah, we're going to be looking for some equipment actually, Rob. Well, yeah. I mean, you see, the thing is now we've got this kind of 50-50 model. Our back of house area is much bigger. We're thinking of, you know, there's the other ways that menus change. So, you know, I think there was a trend before, you know, with Deliveroo and so on, that you're basically buying restaurant meals, but we're kind of thinking a little bit laterally to that now, and having a menu that works equally in the restaurant for delivery. We're also producing ready meals. So, for example, you can order a hot food delivery from us, but you could get with that, you can get some cold meals as well, which you finish off at home for the next day or kind of the day after that. And operationally, obviously, to manage that, so you've got more equipment back of house, so more preparation equipment, more ways of preparing the food that can be used in a multitude of different ways, you know, like I say, eating, take away, and so on. So I think the model's shifting. I never was much of a fan for the kind of delivery where you'd get your restaurant dish and it would all be in one box, and the cold stuff would have gone a bit soggy and the hot stuff would have kind of wiggled around a bit. So we'll actually kind of build the dishes in the containers and heat them in the containers. So when you actually get it at home, it looks nice, and the sides to that will kind of actually be in their own little dish as well. So yeah, much more space back of house. Yes, more equipment, definitely, and more kind of energy saving, more efficiency in the back of house area as well.
Okay, that's quite a good topic to lead on to. Just batting it over to you, Rob. You know, the efficiency and innovation of equipment, you know, is going to be key going forward, particularly with some of the government's carbon goals. How much focus is Maidaid at the moment putting on developing new equipment that's more energy efficient to run?
I think across the industry, not just with Maidaid, it's always at the forefront of our thoughts. You know, as warewash specialists, we're always trying to reduce the amount of water that each machine uses on every cycle, which has the knock-on effect of chemical usage, energy efficiency, and everything else that goes with it. And the factories are always trying to improve. Obviously, with the nature of the industry, there's a lot of competition in there, so we're always trying to be at the forefront of that. So that in itself drives everybody forward in the right sort of direction.
And warewashing seems to be an interesting place at the moment, in the sense that, I mean, the latest generation of models on the market are all very, very efficient anyway. I mean, how much more gain do you think can be made in that area?
It's a difficult one, because I think it comes to a point where we'll be washing with fresh air. Where the reduction, you know, it gets to a point where if it starts to affect wash quality and the sanitisation process, then that's where we have to stop. But there's other options as well with regard to low temperature chemicals that can be used, which helps with the actual running cost of the machine overall, and puts the emphasis more on the chemical side as well, which is a major part of the process anyway.
Do you think, therefore, Rob, that the differentiator might actually be price then, in terms of technology versus cost?
Unfortunately, we've seen over the last couple of months a definite change from specification-driven orders to price-driven orders, which, due to the circumstances, is understandable. And to try and counter that, we've brought in measures like doing promotions on our Amica range, which is what we describe as our entry-level machines, but also offering lease rental options on the larger things. Unfortunately, we're hoping that there's going to be a bigger input from the government with regard to grants towards the hospitality industry and those sort of things, and to encourage that, you know, trying to help the dealers and in turn the end users with either lower cost entry-level machines or spreading the cost of the higher specification machines is, is the best way forward, we see it.
Yeah, because Maidaid has actually held its prices from 2017 levels, hasn't it? So how have you managed to do that?
It's been difficult, and we've been taking a hit year on year from the factories. The last time we had a price increase was 2017. In fairness, we were due a price increase June this year, but that's been delayed for obvious reasons. And we're looking to relaunch facelift machines in January, February next year, and we'll be potentially looking at that. At the moment, we're trying to pass on the benefits of things like the exchange rate to the dealers, again, in terms of the end users.
Louise, just returning to you and that equipment and kitchen design angle again. you know, it's fair to say in the last couple of years, a lot of the mainstream restaurant operators have increased their kind of vegan and plant-based menus as part of their offer. And there's been quite a debate within the industry of how you manage that from a kitchen point of view, particularly the cooking of the different areas of the menu on the same pieces of equipment. And there's been some controversy around that. I just wondered what your views were on that. Do you think that operators should have certain equipment for cooking plant-based food and certain equipment for meat?
Well, yes, obviously. I mean, I'm obviously someone who has a plant-based diet. That's the driving force behind my business. Personally, yes. But operationally, I mean, I absolutely think veganism should be treated with the same reverence as a kind of religious need in terms of cross-contamination. That's my personal view. I don't think that's widely shared across the industry with chefs and in kitchens. You know, in an ideal world, you would have a separate grill, you would have separate pans, you would have everything completely separate. But I think that's a massive ask and requires a really good deal of training. And I think it needs to be presented in a completely different way to just people who are not vegan, so that they really fully understand the meaning of that to someone like myself who does eat an exclusively plant-based diet. I think if they could come up with that kind of assurance, I think certainly I would be through your door, you know. But I prefer to eat in vegan establishments. I do eat in non-vegan establishments, but I definitely would prefer it. I don't know how it would kind of, I don't see it happening personally anytime soon, and I have my doubts. I mean, I've been vegan for a very long time, and I've experienced everything. I've been, from ordering a pizza when I was out with my children, vegan pizza, and then finding a lump of beef in the very middle of the pizza, sort of right at the end, which had obviously been placed there intentionally, you know. So obviously I've experienced plenty of cross-contamination. You just, as a vegan person, you have to make your peace with that, really. If you're going to go out, that's what you're going to encounter. I think I would welcome a drive within the industry, but I don't know. I mean, as a vegan person, I'm generally quite shocked that people still eat meat, and I don't mean that in any controversial sense of the word, but I really am, you know, because the increasing amount of evidence to support the kind of plant-based diet as being the diet of the future. You know, you've got like fried chicken brands, for example. I mean, you've got brands that are wholly focused upon meat still. You know, you've got a lot of the leading restaurants in London are focused on steak, you know, and these are the most popular restaurants in London. So until there's a kind of major shift, generally, I don't see people taking this very seriously. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question. But yeah, I think there's got to be some real major kind of moves overall in terms of people's consciousness for that to actually happen. But yeah, I'll definitely welcome it if it does happen, of course.
And probably, you know, prior to the lockdown, even going back as far as sort of 18 months ago, it really seemed that every major menu launch from a sort of mainstream chain operator seemed to major on the vegan, you know, new vegan dishes, new plant-based dishes. Do you think that, you know, given that we've had this shutdown, there will still be the emphasis on that moving forward, or will some of that momentum be lost?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? I don't want to be too controversial here, but I see a lot of what's coming back as a bit of a step backwards, really. You know, a lot of kind of people just trying to get back into kind of a little bit of sort of debauchery, I suppose, and eating steak and drinking and stuff. But maybe that'll be quite short-lived, I think, given as the overall sort of drives within the movement. I do think that, like with a restaurant like ours, and certainly what we saw before the lockdown, see, our environment is very clean. Obviously, it's kind of clean eating. Clean eating gets a kind of dual good and bad press, I think. But I think there is a growing movement of people who are very kind of invested in that as the way forward into the future. And we were very, very busy before the lockdown, and this was a new kind of person, I think. And I think that will evolve. So as a separate movement, like a vegan establishment, very clean, very healthy, not puritanical, because we're not puritanical at all, but this is a kind of new generational thing. I think the normal operators will continue to offer vegan options. But yeah, I suspect they'll probably stay quite token within operators that offer kind of predominantly a meat offering.
Okay.
Louise, you managed to crowdfund your initial sites. Is that something that you're going to use going forwards with the sites that you're expanding to?
Yeah. Okay. Good question. It's a good segue, because we are actually crowdfunding at the moment. So basically, when this whole lockdown happened, there was this kind of 6 weeks of kind of massive uncertainty, and the government were literally kind of making their schemes up as they went along at that time. And someone compared it to this game of whack-a-mole. They'd come up with one scheme, and then a whole load of other problems would kind of come up. Because obviously, I honestly think that the government, it's been a good experience as well, because I don't really think they knew what was going on in the world of business in this country, and I think they are a lot wiser now. So, I mean, for example, the Sybil scheme, the bank turned us down for flat. We did get a bounce back loan, but the government future fund is kind of what's really helped us, because we're a high growth startup. We've taken investment. We did a very, very successful crowdfund in 2018, which was for our flagship London site. We were actually just about to do another funding round when this thing started. Literally, we were about to launch early March. So obviously that had to go on to the back burner. So the government future fund was like the perfect vehicle for us, really. We're a high growth startup. We've taken investment in the last 3 years. So we're actually crowdfunding now to raise the match funds for the government future fund. That's going on Cedars right at this minute. And that will be for our next phase of expansion, which will be for our next Cambridge site, but also to invest in our marketing for our new online model as well. And actually, I think, Rob, you touched on that earlier about looking for government support for hospitality, not just for us, but for people like Rob's business, because frugal is the new normal. We're looking at our Cambridge site, fitting that out at literally 50% of the cost per square foot that we did on our London site when everything was sort of rosy. So support kind of is needed on an ongoing basis if operators are going to spend anywhere near the levels that they used to spend at. And what you said, Rob, is completely right. We are looking at price point now. That is a major driving factor in all of our purchasing decisions right now. I don't know if the government will introduce any further hospitality grants, but I think it is needed.
Just picking up on that point then for Rob, has Maidaid managed to benefit from any of the government schemes that have been introduced during this crisis, or is there anything they're going to grab going forward, like the Kickstarter scheme?
No, I mean, from our point of view, the only thing we've moved forward with is the furlough scheme in itself. It was just cutting out, because every company across the country is going to cut their cloth as quickly as possible to make sure we've got a sustainable business when we come out the other end of it. And we've been adjusting our staffing levels to suit. It's been easier since the beginning of July, obviously with the part-time basis as well. But from our point of view, we've been very lucky, because we cut the cloth to suit as quickly as we possibly could. The business has been going in the right sort of direction since then.
Okay. We're kind of getting towards the end, so we'll just close with one more question to you each. Rob, looking forward to the months ahead, how would you describe your focus now? Presumably the goals have shifted compared to what they were at the beginning of the year. What would represent a good year for Maidaid?
I think, yeah, it has and it hasn't. I mean, from our point of view, as a supplier, we want to make sure that our major point is supporting the dealer network and in turn the end users. And if that means promotions, lease options, how we approach the customer base altogether, I think our dealer base is spread very wide, and the type of areas that we cover is, it covers all different sectors. So we've been very lucky on that sort of basis. But our approach has been working since and even during the lockdown, so I don't think it's going to change moving forward. It's all about communication and speaking to people on a regular basis, really.
Sure. Okay. And to put that over to you, Louise, success at the end of 2020, is it based on survival?
Well, like I say, I am an optimist. I like to think that the changes that we've introduced into our model, and obviously raising funds successfully, will allow us to invest in new opportunities for growth. I think it's essential to change, and think out of the box. And I think the smaller you are, the easier that is. Really, there's this kind of word nimble, which is used quite a lot. But we're a 2-site operator. Obviously, that's a lot easier to manage than being a 25-site operator. So yeah, I'm optimistic and hoping that we're going to emerge even stronger. And plus, we've got new things coming now, which is always exciting.
Okay, we wish you the very best of luck. Thank you both for joining us today, and we'll be back again soon with a new episode of Market Talk. Thank you.